And welcome to Hawkeye's House of Horrors. I'm Hawkeye, and this is where I'm doing my movie reviews here in the attic of the House of Horrors here. Um, it's a hot September day here, so I hope you don't get any sweat on you. If you hear any rattling, it's my fan trying to keep me cool. It's a lovely September day. It's been a good week. Um, but today I'm going to talk about a film I love from 1982, and that is the original Creepshow. Uh, it's good. It's because it's penned by Stephen King. I've done The Shining. That's the other Stephen King film I've done. But it's interesting to note because my wife and I, this past Sunday, just went and saw The Long Walk, based upon a novella by Richard Bachman, which is Stephen King's pen name. Um, he wrote under that name for some books or a few titles. But I must say, I really enjoyed that film, The Long Walk. So if you're a Stephen King fan, that's definitely one I would recommend there. It's definitely graphic, definitely violent, but my oh my, there's a lot there to digest in that film. Great film. I haven't seen a film that good in quite a while. I don't see a whole lot of new films, um, but I tend to go and see one every couple of months, every few months. I try to at the theaters, so that's a good one there. But back to the film I'm going to do here. That's Creepshow. Here's I gotta really come in there. I have it own it on DVD. I bought that puppy for $5 at Walmart years and years ago. I think I've seen it like 15 times since I bought it, so I think I got my money's worth out of that one. There's not much on it. There's the trailer, a little bit of information, but and as I said, I love this film. I have a feeling that one time this film wasn't thoroughly loved. I think it's garnered a bit of perhaps a cult following. For example, Leonard Maltin, I've got a book of his, or a few of them actually, going over reviews of uh, generally like theatrical films. He didn't like it. He gave it 2 stars out of four. Uh, and that's one of the films I disagree with Leonard Maltin on. I love this one, and I'm going to get into reasons I really enjoy it. Really love this film. Now, this sucker, it was directed by George A. Romero. I haven't mentioned his name yet in this review, but he had done um, the infamous zombie movies like Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead by this point. Um, and Martin is another one, great vampire flick. Um, but he was good buddies with Stephen King. They wanted to work together, and was their opportunity. And as I said, it was the screenplay was actually done by Stephen King. A couple of them were based on short stories he had written, but this was King's screenwriting debut as well. So the first film he was the screenwriter for. That was distributed by Warner Brothers, and this sucker clocks in at 120 minutes, so 2 hours even. That is definitely a longer horror film. Now, Romero, through the years, wasn't afraid to make longer horror films, such as Dawn of the Dead. There's like a director's cut that I love of that, which I think is like close to 2.5 hours long. Um, and it's still almost not enough for me. But yeah, this is a longer film. But what it is it's a horror anthology. So it's not just one story. Um, and there's 5 stories, as I say. I say there's six because there's the wraparound story or the prologue. There's that story as well. Um, but there's a number of horror tales in this one. Now, this one had a budget of $8 million back in 1982. So in today's dollars, that's 2025. That would be a budget of $26.8 million. And it did pretty good at the box office. It made $21 million back in 1982, or in today's dollars, that'd be $70.5 million at the box office. And it was released on November the 10th, 1982. And I was reading they were wanting to release it a little bit earlier, but they were afraid of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, afraid that some of those crowds would bite into the box office of this film. So they just waited a little while and released it a week and a half after Halloween. And they, as I said, they did pretty well at the box office. And on its opening week, it was number one in the box office. It actually knocked out the very good Sylvester Stallone First Blood, the very first Rambo film, knocked it out of first place. And this is the only George A. Romero film, I believe, this is what I read, that opened up at number one at the box office. So no other Romero film ever did that beyond Creepshow. Now, as I said, this is a horror anthology, and I saw this one as a kid, probably the first time when I was 11. Same with the sequel, um, and Creepshow 2, and another one was Tales from the Dark Side, which, as I've heard, was supposed to be Creepshow 3. Um, those were my first introductions into adult horror anthologies. And I've always liked them. There's some really, really good ones from the 70s. I hope someday to go over, like Tales from the Crypt. Vault of Horror is another one. Um, and there's some influences from those in this movie here. I'll get to that in a sec, but um, I generally like horror anthologies. They can work out really well, and they're good. I think in a party atmosphere. Short stories to crank out the horror works pretty good. Now, as I said, there was Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, just two examples from the 70s, but of horror anthologies. But there were also horror comic books, which is what Creepshow is in this film world. It is a comic book, horror comic book. So this film definitely has like that 50s comic book style look going on in the film. And those comics influenced both Stephen King and George A. Romero in leading them down the paths they would went to becoming a novelist and a filmmaker, um, and making horror films generally over the course of his career. But they were influences to both of those guys. Um, now, I love, as I said, it's got that 1950s comic book style. So I love like when the horror is happening, you can hear the music by John Harrison. It's awesome, but you hear that and the look of shock on the actor's face, and then there's color, very unnatural color added to the background or splashed upon the front of their face, like um, and each story has got that going on with some sort of color, like whether it be a red or a blue, purple, I think a green. But it does a very good job in adding, trying its best, definitely to uh, get that comic book look going, and I love that. It's really good. The sequel didn't do that, Creepshow 2. Um, at the same time, it definitely, I will get to that. That's going to be the next film I review, but it definitely still has a comic book feel, not quite as extreme or as well done as we had in the original here. Um, now, I love the opening to this film. You're just shown this house, and obviously it's Halloween. You see a jack-o'-lantern in the window, um, and Billy, he's the little boy who reads Creepshow, the comic. He gets caught by his dad, played by Tom Atkins. Interestingly, he was also in Halloween 3. He's a father, real asshole, really abusive. Doesn't want his son reading these comics, but you don't like his character, pretty quick. Um, but it's that whole intro scene to Creepshow, the comic book, and Creepshow, the movie. And then it goes into the credit sequence, or, well, Billy looking out his window, and there's the creep splashed in blue, darkness, light blue, really. Um, and then going to the animation sequence or the title sequence with the wonderful music by John Harrison. I really love the intro to this film. Um, now, interesting to note too. Um, I'm not sure why he did this, but it makes all the stories connect. You could say, is there's a marble ashtray that is in every one of the stories, even the prologue. It's in all of them. So look out. It's rather obvious. You see it in the very first story. Um, but keep an eye out for this marble ashtray. It's in all of the stories, which is kind of cool. So I'm gonna go over try and be quick because there, as I said, there's 5 or 6 stories. Try and go through the story or little quick synopsis of each of the stories. So the first one is called Father's Day. Now this one is probably, I'm going to say, my least favorite of all of the stories, including the prologue. But I still think it's great. It still is effective. It still does what it needs to do, and it knows exactly what it is. So it sets up the film up well. It's very much campy, slawsy, 50s, trashy horror comic book story. Um, Now it's about a father who has been murdered by his own daughter. Now this is played by Vivica Lindfors. So she's coming back. It's Father's Day, so she's coming back to the house, and to go to the gravesite, which is also at the house of her very rich, also very dead father. Um, but this is once all the characters are introduced, and you know the backstory that she murdered her father, even though he murdered her husband. But once you know all of that, it really brings out a Romero-esque um, scare, as well. He comes out of the grave in zombie-like fashion. Um, and it's Tom Savini who returns with Romero to do the effects. He had worked with Romero before on Dawn of the Dead. That was a big one for him. He also did Friday the 13th, another film I have reviewed. Um, but he does the effects, and I think they're really effective effects. They aren't done in a style to look overly realistic. And I, from my take anyway, like it's made kind of made to look like it's in a 50s comic book. Um, So the zombie coming out of the grave looks very different than the zombies did in Dawn of the Dead or will in Day of the Dead, and those zombies look totally different from each other as well. Um, Day of the Dead, those were tremendous zombies, but um, but yeah, I think they're really good effects, and well, Savini's a master in that work. Now, as well, I got a note. John Travolta has got nothing on Ed Harris, who is in this film. He's still got hair on his head too. But the dance moves he pulls off, whoa, man, that's pretty good stuff there. And Ed Harris had worked with Romero before in Night Riders. That's one I would suggest. Stephen King's even in that film too. But it's kind of more of like a fantasy action drama. It was done the year previous, I think 1981, but Ed Harris is in it, Tom Savini's in it. and a lot of other people that were in Romero films. He kept the same actors around quite often. They worked well together, so why not keep them? Um, and then playing the zombie of the father is John Amplis, who was in Martin. He was the main character in that film, and man, you cannot tell that's him. You just hate in this the effects work done by Savini. So you have no idea who's in there, or it's even a person. I don't know, but that's who's under the makeup there. So that's very cool as well. So the second story is called "The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill." Now, this one was based on a story I have read called Weeds. And it was included in Night Shift. I've got that book somewhere. I've read it twice. Personally, that might be my favorite collection of his short stories. And it was his first. Um, I really like that one. But yeah, it was called Weeds. Um, but in this one, we actually get to see Stephen King himself in the lead role, uh, playing, I, off the top of my head, got to be the biggest role he's ever played. Um, you know, he always generally comes back and puts a cameo in a lot of the films that were based on his books, but this one's got to be his biggest. He plays a rather dumb and dopey farmer named Jordy Verrill, who comes across a meteor in his farm. You see it shoot out of the sky and land on his property, on his farm. So in turn, he thinks he could make some serious coin with this meteor. He could sell it for $200, not a dollar less. Thing is, he touches it, and in turn, he starts to turn into a vegetable, really, before our eyes as the story progresses. This is definitely the silly one. There's silliness in generally every single one of these stories, but this one's really silly. As I read, Romero told Stephen King to act like Wile E. Coyote in his performance, and you can kind of see it. Well, as I said, he's dumb and dopey, so that works well with Wile E. Coyote. So at one time this was my least favorite. Um, but now I'm like, I like seeing Stephen King in this role. He's not an actor, but I gotta tell you, he does a pretty good job here. Um, and it's yeah, played to the hilt, played for laughs until the end, and it's not so funny anymore. So it's got that uh King twist at the end or that horrific turn at the end. Um, but yeah, I think this one's great too. Seeing him drink wine out of a bottle, I think, watching some WWF wrestling from the early 80s, you can hear Vince McMahon commentating during the match. Anyways, so that's the second story. The third story is called Something to Tide You Over. And I got to tell you, I really enjoy this one. Um, um, Even though, like, you could say there certainly is a comparison between this story and one called The Ledge. I think it was also in Night Shift. It later was in the film Cat's Eye. Um, but it's just sort of the romance or the cheating aspect and the husband of the wife um, trying to turn the tables upon the lover and the other man. Um, but why do I love it so? Definitely comes like a big thing beyond Romero. Um, in his wonderful way of directing this and putting this on the screen is the actors in this one. We have Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson, who then was fairly unknown. He may have been in Cheers and he may not have yet. Like when he was acting in this, he probably wasn't even in Cheers yet. And that was his breakthrough role. And Galen Ross, who was in Dawn of the Dead as well. Her role is much smaller, but yeah, um, Oh, it's really sad hearing or seeing her character, what it's going through. It's pretty bad. But here, Danson, he plays Harry Wentworth, who's having an affair with Leslie Nielsen's wife. And Nielsen is playing Richard Vickers, and the wife is played by Ross. Richard is aware of this, and he's okay with it, I guess, but he tells us that whatever he owns, he just doesn't let go. Like, um, really taking ownership over his wife, and she's not allowed to do anything she wants, or leave him, or do anything like this. So, yeah, you're not going to get away with this. So then he goes and meets Harry at his apartment, and he plays a tape of Rebecca crying, and definitely in some trouble that Harry can hear. So this leads them to Richard's secluded beach, very secluded. No one will hear you if you scream there. And we get out on the beach, and what do we have here but a hole? And well, Richard pulls a gun, and Harry's got to get in that hole. Um, and bury himself in, and then he can see his wife if he does this. So, well, Richard does it because, well, he's going to get shot and killed if he doesn't. And then Richard hooks up a TV, and we see Rebecca on the beach, um, buried up to her neck now, like Harry. Um, but the tide is coming in on her, and she's crying, just needing help. Someone come and save me, get me out of here, help me. And the water's coming in. Very effective, and Leslie Nielsen pretty much just thinks it's a big joke. And I really fooled you guys, and now it's time for some revenge. Um, and he's really enjoying it. So, unfortunately, um, both Harry and Rebecca perish on the beach, and Richard drives away. And then this is where we get another nice Romero-esque revenge as both Harry and Rebecca come from the grave. They're also teleporting zombies. And I'm like, man, did Lucio Fulci influence this? I'm not saying he did, but they are definitely teleporting zombies. Um, Very interesting. Um, and they just are going to take Richard to the beach and see how long he can hold his breath. And Richard says, I can hold my breath for a long time as the tide is coming in on him. So the tables are turned back on him. So I really, really enjoyed that story. Then next is probably, well, not probably, it is my favorite story of the bunch. And I hear that from a lot of people, a lot of fans of Creepshow, and it's called The Crate. And interestingly, this one wasn't released in any of his short story books, which I'm not sure if it was a copyright problem or why that was. Because Weeds was in a magazine, I think, first, and then it was put into Night Shift. Um, but funny enough, Stephen King used to have his stories published in nudie books, like Playboy, Penthouse, I think. This one was in Gallery back in 1979. Um, that particular nudie book. But the story here is a custodian. He's flipping a coin to see where he's going to clean up next. He loses a coin under some stairs and behind a grate at this university. He's looking for the coin under the stairs, and he finds this crate, but it's all the way back from 1834. So he calls up one of the professors of the university, Dexter Stanley, played by Fritz Weaver. And he comes to the university. They get the crate out, take it to, I think, the lab, and they're going to get inside this crate and see what's in there. But inside, they find a vicious, sharp-toothed monster that attacks and kills the custodian. Professor Stanley, he's hysterical, and he goes to his friend's house. Friend is Henry Northup, played by Hal Holbrook. Um, Another great actor. I think he puts in a tremendous performance in this, just as Weaver does. But um, boy, he does a great job here. So he's going to help his buddy. Um, Thing is, Henry, when he realizes this is all true, this story, there is a monster in the university. He decides to have the monster fill his belly up first, with his own vicious monster at home, his wife, um, Wilma, or just call me Billy. Everyone does. Who clearly has a drinking problem and is extremely abusive towards um, Henry, not just mentally, but physically as well. We see later. But um, but yeah, so he's gonna send his wife in there and be done with her. So it's an interesting little turn of events in that. But his wife, I'm sorry, she's it's played by Adrienne Barbeau, and she's really good as this. Oh, terrible, terrible wife. I'm glad my wife is nothing like her. Um, but all three of them, Barbeau, Weaver, Holbrook, boy, they all knock it out of the park with their performances and make this one my favorite of the bunch. And then the next one is called They're Creeping Up on You. Here we have the late great E.G. Marshall playing Upson Pratt, who is a mega rich, mega prick, who has this great fear of germs. You can see it right in his apartment. He's got gloves on. Everything is like white and um, no germs, no dirt anywhere. I looked it up, or it said it was mysophobia. Mysophobia is what he would have: a fear of dirt, fear of germs, that type of thing. But Marshall is awesome in this role, and you do not care for him. But yeah, it's Stephen King did this with a lot of his not so great characters. You don't like him, but sometimes you can't help but laugh at the performance or how heartless this guy is. And wow, did he really just say that? Or wow, is he really doing that? But Marshall is great in this role here. And yeah, like how he treats people like pieces of garbage. They're just stepping to stones to whatever he wants, whatever he needs. I'm going to step on you to get there. But poor old Upson is having his apartment taken over by cockroaches. Until at the very end of the story, you see cockroaches actually bursting out of his body. That I can't imagine seeing this in the theater at the time. There must have been some good screams. People seeing that. This is the creepy one. The 80s, man, they were filled with um, movies with bugs, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Wow. Uh, I remember the first time seeing that, I screamed louder than I ever had in my entire life, maybe to this day. But yeah, um, it must have been. I mean, I am imagining it was quite effective at the time. Seeing that in the theater, um, and maybe this is where it does certainly doesn't with me, but maybe where in some people's opinion the movie maybe was going too far here. But um, yeah, it's super enjoyable as well. This story, um, and I don't have a problem with cockroaches, so hey, I can watch it again now, and it'd be good. But maybe this is a good one for bug haters out there, to see how they would react to this one. And then there's the prologue or the wraparound story, as I call it, of Billy played by Joe King, and that is Stephen King's son is actually playing this character, um, and with Tom Atkins, and at the end, Billy sends away from the magazine and gets a voodoo doll that he turns on his father and putting pins in his neck and really hurting his dad. So exacting his revenge as well on his dad. And Tom Savini shows up in this one as well and plays one of the garbage men um, right near the end of the film. So now I would say I wish Creepshow was a real comic. Um, they did release a comic of the film, so with the stories and everything done in a comic format. I haven't seen it, but I've seen it in the stores and everything. It looks pretty darn cool. So that's out there. That's available. Any big fans of the film, you can go and look for that somewhere, perhaps in a bookstore. Now, the music I was talking about is done by John Harrison. He went on to do the music for Day of the Dead, also George A. Romero. He also did the music to Effects. And this was only the second film he'd ever worked on, and I I think this is a spectacular score. Um, it's really, really great. I would go as far as to say, and maybe this isn't the truth anymore, but this is one of the most underrated 80s horror scores out there by Harrison. I just listened to it and man, I'm put right in the film. It works so well. And the timing of the music and the film work together well, so well, especially in the one something that tied you over. Oh, you can see that it's like bam, 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 the music, but then the screen is doing the same thing in time with that. So it works really well. Amazing. So, um, and then as I said, Tom Savini did the effects for this one, and they're great as well. So, Romero brought in some great people to work on this film. And yeah, I love this one. And it's interesting because there are a lot more movies from 1982 I got to get to. So it feels so bad to have this as low as I do on it, but um, this is definitely a double thumbs up for me. And any King fans out there, you gotta see this one. Come on, Creepshow in 1982. So as I said, I will do the Creepshow 2 next, and then I'll do Creepshow 3. I've seen it once, gonna see it again. There's also a TV show I haven't seen it yet. Um, Creepshow. I'm meaning to get in there and start watching that show, um, and maybe give you my 2 cents on it if when I get to it. Hopefully, I can get to it before I'm done the these Creepshow films. Um, but anyways, that's it. And until next time, have yourself a wonderful day.